Good afternoon. Welcome, Edupalooza. Thank you so much for sharing this session with us here today. My name is Tressa Pankovits. I'm the Associate Director at the Progressive Policy Institute's Reinventing America's Schools project. And we know you had a lot of choices for how to spend your time at the conference this afternoon, and we really are glad that you chose to be here with us. Joining me today is the Director of Reinventing America's Schools, David Osborne. He's also the author of a book by the same name. We also have with us Mariama Shahid, who is the founder and CEO of Global Prep Academy in Indianapolis. With us also is Superintendent of the San Antonio Public Schools, Pedro Martinez, and last but never least, Alex Magaña, who is Executive Director of Beacon Network Schools, and they are our expert panelists today who will be talking to us about doing the hard work of opening and running innovation schools and various school districts across the country. So the topic of today's session is innovation schools, which we believe are the key to 21st century learning. Innovation schools are autonomous schools that are located in school districts and operate on a contract with the district. And in researching these schools, we have come to believe that they really are a superior model. So the schools that we're going to be talking about today have different names in different places. In Indianapolis, they're called innovation schools. In Denver, the schools are organized into zones, groups of schools. Same in Springfield, Massachusetts. So those schools are often called zone schools or I-zone schools. In Camden, New Jersey, they're known as Renaissance schools. And but the one thing that they all have in common is they have autonomy. Most of them are part of a district located in district buildings, but they're governed by their own nonprofit boards of directors. That board of directors negotiates the contract with the school district, but after that, the schools are autonomous. They choose the model that they tend to want to use. They determine their school calendar, the length of the day and year. Quite importantly, they hire their own personnel. Generally, the school leader is hired by the board, and then the school leader selects and hires the school personnel. They have the decision to make all of these, they have the right to make all of these important decisions, because the theory is that those who spend most time with students and with their families best understand the family's needs and the students' needs. And if they can design their schools, it is shown that students achieve more than when those decisions are made by a remote central office. Of course, in exchange for all that freedom, they have heightened accountability. And that accountability comes through the contract with the school district. The contracts are designed to be performance contracts with very clear metrics for success. So in addition to meeting any state benchmarks or federal benchmarks that might be out there, they also have to meet the metrics in these performance contracts that they've agreed to with the district. And so if that does not happen, the district, of course, has the right to decline to renew the contract and to find another operator to run the school, or even to take the school back. And the model is not just a positive model for the schools. It's also a great model we're finding for school districts. Because the school districts decide to designate a particular school building as an innovation schools, it gives the districts the ability to control where the schools are located, unlike a charter that might just pop up anywhere in the district. So they can place those schools in places where they're needed. This gives the district an opportunity to plan around capacity issues, avoid creating more classroom seats than they have students to actually fill. And it also gives school districts a new tool to design their portfolios. If a district, say, is a little light on STEM programs, they may go out and look for an operator who has an excellent track record at operating STEM schools, and they may designate a school as a STEM school. Same for maybe an arts integrated school. You're going to hear from Mariama Shahid in just a minute. She runs a dual language school. So now that you have the picture of what these schools are and how they operate, and of course we'll take a much deeper dive, I am going to put a quick poll up, and let's see who is in our audience. I apologize, 1 second here. Here we go. Okay, we always like to know who we are talking to, who our audience is, so that we can tailor some of that information. So we've got a few more people. Anybody else? I see there's about 2 or 3 more that haven't answered. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to David Osborne, and I will collect the results of that poll as best as I can. This is my first time using this platform, and David is going to introduce our participants and dive into the substance of matter. David?
Thank you, Tressa, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to start with Mariama Shahid. As Tressa said, Mariama founded an innovation network school in Indianapolis, a dual language immersion school. This was, you'll have to tell us, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. Tell us why you decided to do this, Mariama. You were a longtime teacher and then a principal in a district next door.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, David, for having us on today. And so yes, it was 5 years ago that our school opened. And so when we opened, it really was because I had been a teacher and a principal, as you said, in a district. And in my first few years as a principal, I think like many principals, I didn't even realize how much of a middle manager I was. There was a vision for the district, and I was playing my role as a principal in one of 9 elementary schools. But what I came to see where there were specific needs that my school community had, specifically the school that I was in, we had a large influx of Spanish-speaking families. And I saw I had these desires to do things differently in our building. But it was very clear from our superintendent, while he was very supportive of the work that I was doing, a dual language school wasn't the direction that the district was going. And so it was wanting more autonomies, wanting the opportunity to serve the community directly, that really led me to even looking outside of the traditional district setup of a school. So that's what led me to starting the school. And that's what keeps me in this innovation space. It's the autonomy and the decision making to impact the teachers and students and community that we're in.
Well, tell us about your students and your school and community.
So we are Global Preparatory Academy. We have about 650 students. We now serve pre-K through grade 6, and next year we'll add 7th, and the following year we'll add grade 8. Our school is a 2-way immersion model, and we have a 2-teacher model. So our students start at the youngest grades with 50% of their day in Spanish and 50% of their day in English. And what's really special about our space is we serve about half of our students are African American and they speak English at home, and about the other half of our students are native Spanish speaking students. Many of them have never lived in Mexico or any other Spanish speaking country. They're 2nd generation or even 3rd generation in many cases. About 75% of our kids qualify for free or reduced price lunch. And within our school, the building that we are in from the district was a school that had been failing for 7 years. And so it was facing takeover from the state. And so 70% of our children in our school would have been here, whether it was Global Prep, a dual language school, or Riverside, the neighborhood school. But within our construct, we have about 30% of our kids who come from outside of this community, which is largely African American, to create this nice mix of students that speak different languages and have different cultures as well.
And so how's that working? What kind of results are you getting?
Oh, it's early. It's very early. I tell people all the time, I think probably starting a school from the ground up, probably have a whole bunch of things never to do again and a few lessons learned along the way. And of the worst time to start a school, the things that we dealt with between the state test changing and now COVID, we're really focused on making sure we still get results for our kids and families. So in our first 2 years that we opened, we were rated an A school from the Department of Education for student growth. In Indiana, whenever a new school comes online, the first 3 years are all about growth. And we were able to show dramatic improvements with our kids from the beginning to where we were in those first 2 years. Like many schools, we took the hit of a new test, and we're at the point now of understanding what this new assessment means and how to push our kids to succeeding at high levels. We have increased our enrollment since we opened. And we continue to do that. And we've improved and increased our parent engagement because our belief has always been that while we're a school that serves grades pre-K through 6, it's really important that the community and the parents be as much a part of our school as those who are in the building every single day. So things are certainly coming. And I think we probably have even more aggressive goals as we look ahead to the future.
Speaking of parent engagement, I remember you telling me the story that about all you did to engage the community before the school opened, and then how parents would say to you, well, how long will it be before you fail?
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that process of getting to know the parents and the community getting to know you and the school.
I mean, I think, like I said earlier, where our school sits is a predominantly African-American community. And this is a community that anyone who is Black in Indianapolis knows Riverside. So to think about a dual language school coming in Riverside, there was a whole lot of resistance. A lot of parents just not really interested in that type of school and needing to be won over, if you will, to what this would really mean and what it could mean in the future and in the present for their kids. So I will say in the beginning that being a listener and sitting down with families was one of the most important things we could do, because while we had a plan for what the school would be, we had to respect what was here long before we came here. And we still stand on the shoulders of those who paved the way for Global Prep to be in the Riverside community. But I will say when we first started, we would have like maybe 4 and 5 parents that would show up to any of our informationals. And so we realized that in order to bring families out to understand what we were all about, we had to put ourselves out there completely. So we did the door knocking, we did Zumba in the park, we did the movies in the park, we did all those things that were low threats to bring people in so that they could get to know who we were and what we were trying to do. So they would want to be a part of it, as opposed to looking at it from a distance and thinking that this was not something that would be for them. And I think to hear my Black families today talk about how proud they are when their Black son speaks in Spanish or they hear their daughter read in Spanish, to hear Black families excited about that bilingual experience, that was always the vision. And that's what's happening right now at our school.
Great. And I guess that's another example of using the flexibility you have as an innovation school. You could do all that during the summer before you open.
No question about it.
During the year before you open.
And I would just add on too, just the staffing piece. And I know Teresa said this when we first started off, just about having the autonomy to select staff. In our particular model, half of our teachers are native Spanish speakers. But going through the process of bringing teachers from abroad, working with assistants that were in the city, maybe a bilingual assistants at other school districts to become certified. We're working on tuition reimbursement, backdoor ways to get people certified as teachers. Those are things within the district. I'm pretty sure that had I mentioned these possibilities, our superintendent would have said, oh yeah, we're not doing that. But having that flexibility to find a way out of no way has been what our school has been all about for the last 5 years.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Let's go to Denver and talk with Alex Magaña. I met Alex probably about the same time I met Mariama, 5-6 years ago, when I was doing research for my book. Alex was a school principal in Denver Public Schools. And I remember you telling me the story, Alex, that your school was struggling. It's in a low-income community. And a very strong charter school was going to open in the same community. And but Denver had created this opportunity through state legislation to create innovation schools. So you went to your teachers, and why don't you take it from there? What did you do? I think you're still muted, Alex.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. You have a really good memory. And Mariama, we could probably share some stories because it was a similar experience when we opened up our second school. But it was like that. The Grant Middle School, or the school that I'm currently at, was the principal. It was if anything, it was in an area, but many of the students in the area were not attending the school because of our boundaries expanded. And we had low enrollment and low academic results. And yes, that is true. A charter school did open down the road. And at that point in time, I walked up, the writing was on the wall. We were under-enrolled. We were underperforming. We were being turned away from the community. And we said, what are we going to become? What are we going to do? And that's exactly what I asked the staff. I was like, either we make the changes together or someone else makes the changes for us. And fortunately for us, we decided to just get together and work with community. I was going down to the market and getting getting information, surveying families. We were sending out surveys, the farmers market. That's what I was thinking of, and just doing everything we can of just getting as much information as what do people want to see in the school and what do they want their kids' experience to be. And after a lot of hard work, we're proud of what we've accomplished as far as at Grant Beacon Middle School. We were able to turn the school around, and it's one of the higher demand schools. And also we are showing great success, yet still with the same population of students. And I think that's what's really remarkable, because we serve a high percentage of students on free and reduced lunch, and we wanted to level the playing field as much as possible.
Tell us a little about your academic model.
So when we talked to, we wanted to do something unique and different, and I'm all about leveling the playing field for our students. And when we serve 85, at the time we were serving 85% of students on free and reduced lunch, we started getting onto the blended learning, personalized learning, which we started with blended learning, which has evolved into personalized learning. And not only, we didn't want to stop there, because it's not about the technology. It's also about extending the school day and having those, and then having enrichment opportunities for our kids. And because that's what we were hearing. So we were hearing about safety, and we were hearing about challenging students, and then giving the kids exposure. And then we wanted to offer this to everyone, not just some students. So our program is about personal blended learning, and we also focus around enrichments, where we extend the day, and when kids have 50 different enrichment activities to choose from, where we partner with community providers and teachers teach their passion. And then we focus a lot of time on character development, where we build out lessons and we celebrate our students. And then and then of course the academics piece. But those are the foundational principles of what our model is all about.
And it's a middle school, is that correct? Yeah,
we get students at 6th, 7th, and 8th. Like I said, we were underperforming based on the state measures, and then also the district measures. We were in color coding. We were red school, and then the other problem was the under enrollment. And now we've been over enrolled and high academic results with our populations, with all the kids that we're serving, which has been a great story.
And when you became one of the faster improving schools in the district, I think, initiated the idea of replicating your school. Is that right? And that led to becoming an innovation zone. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I reached a point where things were moving and things were going really well. And the question kept coming up to me saying, Alex, what's your next step? And I never wanted to go to the district, yet and get involved with that, because I wanted to be at the school level. And my wife would leave me if I jumped into a high school. So at that point, there was a very underperforming school in Southwest Denver that was being phased out, and it was it had extreme low enrollment. The free and reduced lunch rate was even greater, and I was asked, it's like, would you open a Tinley, a native transitional native language school with the Beacon model over here in Southwest Denver? And I just took a step back. I went back to my team. I'm like, what do you guys think about us replicating? And we replicated the model. So then I was able to assign someone here, and I went over there and I started building that out. And I started working with the leader that was going to take over the school, and we worked with the community. And same exact thing that we do in Mariama, because that school, I mean, I was no one wanted to send their kids to the school because of all the things they heard and all the rumors and everything else. And I was doing the same thing. I should have done the movies in the park kind of thing and the Zumba. I never did that part, but I definitely knocked on every single principal's door, going to all the family associations, talking with parents. And it's like, what do you know, and telling them the model that already exists. And the other reason that came is there were parents that were visiting schools that they want, because they were talking about making changes. And one of the parents here was just a remarkable lady that was really committed to making changes for her school. And she just looked at me and she's like, how do we get you over there? And I'm like, no, I'm happy here. I don't want to leave. And so that's where the ideas started coming. It's like, well, why don't you replicate?
So now you have 2 schools. I think the district has approved a third. You're an innovation zone. You have a nonprofit board. What's the advantage to you and to children to being an innovation zone as opposed to just an innovation school?
Yeah, the reason we started looking into the zone is the advocacy. You need to have people really promoting the work that you're doing. When you're an innovation school, you're still under the radar of the district, which is fine. But a lot of times, you struggle staying focused on your innovation plan and what you agreed, to follow. When we went, and then when changes happen at the district level, the restructuring, whatever else, that impacts us, because then we might have a new boss or someone else that does not quite understand the programming or the things that we're doing. So as in a zone, when we started looking at that, having a group of board members, and also I have teachers on my board, and I also have parents on my board from each of the schools, they get to advocate and also hold us accountable to the 4 things that we said we were going to provide them. So we said we're going to do blended learning. So sure enough, that's what we're doing. And then enrichments, yes, we're going to do that. And that way we have advocates that are, 1, advocating, 2, promoting. And then the third thing is additional resources from fundraising, but not only the funding piece, but also expertise. I have board members that live in the community that want to contribute. I have parents that want to contribute. I have also outside people that might be or that are work in corporate America or in a company, and that they can be on the board, and just to provide expertise in some so that we can continue creating the model that we said we were going to provide our families.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think we want to do another survey, Tressa, if that's possible.
Yes. And we'll go ahead and just look at the results in real time, because I think that's the way this program is designed to work.
Okay, so the question here is, in your community or your district, which of the different uses of innovation schools do you think would be most valuable? Sometimes they are used to restart failing schools. Sometimes they're used to give strong schools more autonomy so they can get even stronger. Sometimes they're used to create specialized programs like Montessori and dual language immersion. So if you could answer the quiz, or the survey rather, getting into a school mindset here, the quiz. I'm not seeing any answers flash up there on the screen yet. Just click on the one that you think is most important in your setting. And I know sometimes you want to click on 2 or 3, but just pick one.
Apparently we're having a technical glitch with this quiz, so I'm going to end it and take it off the screen, and we've got some support. Let's see. So David, why don't we just move on to Pedro for now?
Okay, so Pedro Martinez is superintendent in San Antonio. Been there for, it's been a while now, hasn't it? Probably 5 years?
Going on 6, yep. Finishing the 6th year.
It's amazing how time flies. In Texas, these are called partnership schools. The state passed a law, Senate Bill 1882, So they're actually called 1882 partnership schools. And the state actually gives districts an incentive to particularly take failing schools, which might be closed by the state if they fail for 5 years in a row, and partner with a nonprofit or a charter operator or a university, some form of outside organization to turn the school around. And you get a little extra money per child for that. So San Antonio has been very active in doing this. You and your school board have created something like a quarter of your schools now, 20 odd schools. Can you give us the numbers?
Yeah, so we're out of 92 schools, David. We're right now in the low 20s, going probably up to 25 by next year.
Great. And tell us why you and the board are so enthusiastic about this, because you've got I think your board's been voting 7-0 on most things related to the partnership schools. So you've got really strong support. What do you believe, you and the board believe, that this will do for the children of San Antonio?
So for us, just to give context, to our participants, it really is about a belief system in our district about giving autonomy and empowering schools. So we have a range of how we do that in terms of formalization. So we provide autonomy to all schools in most things, but then we have, for example, in-district charter schools, which by law have the same autonomies by state law that charter schools would have. And that's actually a very innovative way that our state has always promoted autonomy. And then the next formalization is an actual 1882 partnership where they can partner with an entity that's aligned with our mission, aligned with our values, as well as the curriculum or the pathway of that school. And so for us, it's been used, we've used this as really a way of doing business, a way of really improving our schools. And what I love is that, for example, we'll develop, we've grown our international baccalaureate schools. We now have the second largest international baccalaureate program in the state, second only to Houston. But we know international baccalaureate is very expensive. So we found a partner that was Texas IB that developed a nonprofit that they live IB. This is all, they think IB is going to save the world. That is who they are. We partner with them. They are the ones to make sure that our curriculum is being put in place with fidelity. They are in charge of training our teachers. We still have we hire all the staff, but they have final approval on the leader of the building. And again, they're really pushing, making sure that IB is being implemented the best way possible. And we have a board that's involved with parents as well as community members that are all passionate about IB. And so that's a little subset of schools. As one example, we have multiple of those kind of subsets. But what I love is they're all pushing in the same direction, which is really fulfilling that mission and making sure children are having the best experience possible.
And how much autonomy do the schools have? Do they get to pick? Does the principal get to choose the teachers? Does the principal control the budget? Those are the two big issues often for school.
We have found a really nice, because again, our district just believes in autonomy overall, but what we have found is a way to balance everything where the autonomy exists around staffing, around resources, but also with 1882. So we were leaders in that legislation because our schools get an extra almost 10% on a per pupil basis that they get to use, and all that money goes to the school. So what's great is that even because one of the challenges with autonomy is that there's not extra money, there's not a lot of money for principals to really be able to do something with. Right. And so what's great is that not only do they have the ability to, instead of if they want to have extra teachers and trade off clerical staff, or, they get to do that now, but even better than that, they get an extra almost $800 per student where they get to decide how to do it. And so for some of these schools, these are high schools with 1,800 kids. So if you do the math, these schools are getting easily well over $1 million where they're adding additional enrichment teachers. They're adding additional programs before and after school. And but what I love is it's all aligned to the mission of that school. So whether it's an IB school, a Montessori school, a single gender school, it's all aligned. And that's, by the way, where we're seeing the most success is when we have those types of partnerships.
And very quickly, can you just sum up what kind of results you're getting?
So overall, as a district, and innovation and autonomy have been our drivers, David. We have went from being our state started giving grades to districts 3 years ago We were an F back in 2016. We're now a B. We closed the gap with our suburban peers. My high school now, there's no high school lower than a B. We will have multiple A's now. Even, and this was just before pre-COVID, we've also closed the gap on each of our measures around college readiness, around college admission. We closed the gap. This is a district with 90% poverty, 97% of color.
Wow, congratulations. So I'm going to hand it back to Tressa for the rest of this.
Oh, I'm not going to let you off the hook, Addie. We're going to be in this. Let's kind of do survey number 2 again and see if we can get that up just real quick, since we teased people by showing it. I have one of the support staff who was going to launch that for me. Okay. So let's see if you can vote on that. From your perspective, which of the uses of innovation schools do you think would be the most valuable? There we go. Nice. A lot of different visions for how these schools can be used. That's great. And I really like seeing that 2 of the top answers are allowing struggling schools to improve, and especially the portfolio. That is so important. And that's something that David emphasizes all the time as to how important it is for parents to have choices, because anybody that has an artistic kid knows that that sending a child like that to a STEM school just isn't going to work very well for anybody. So I want to follow up with our 3 panelists and hear what they think are some of the key takeaways or lessons learned for doing these kinds of schools and doing them well. And we'll just go in the same order. So I'll start with Mariama first, if you want to give us, our audience, some insights into that.
Well, I think some of the key takeaways just are be really clear about the landscape that you're entering and set goals accordingly. I think that's one of the things in terms of mistakes we made along the way was we came in with our idea, but we really didn't assess our landscape to realize that it was going to take longer to get to where we wanted to be than we thought. And I think another piece is with innovation, be really clear about what does autonomy mean in your construct. And when we first started, when we first opened our school, we were one of the first 3 innovation schools to open within the Indianapolis public schools. And I think we weren't clear about what that autonomy meant, and they weren't either. And it's meant that there's been some rubs along the way, and we've had to iron those things out. But being clear from the very beginning would have helped things to run smoother and to really be a partnership in not just in the words, but in the actions. So specifically, I'll just say within even service level agreements, we use, as many of our innovation schools do here in Indianapolis, the transportation as well as the food service and the facility of the school, of the district rather. So in using those things, what does it mean to have complete autonomy over how things run within that space? So does it mean that we have to be out of the building at 10 o'clock because that's what it is for all of the other schools? Does it mean that we have weekend access because we're an innovation school as opposed to their other schools that don't? But small things like that, while it can seem minute, when they all add up, it can build to frustration within a partnership that's really not necessary if there's clarity from the very beginning.
Very good. And Alex, how about you? When you, David mentioned when you started, you took over one of the lowest performing schools.
Yeah, Mariama, we have to have coffee. I'm saying the same exact problem. Yeah, taking over Kepner Beacon Middle School was an eye-opener because we were trying to, it's like, what set of rules are you playing with and what's the agreement, right? So I think having a clearly defined mission of what, and does it align to the district? And then where does the district, where are your district cheerleaders? And since we went through some changes, at the district level, that's when we set up the board and they became the cheerleaders, for us to really kind of advocate on it. So some of my lessons learned is have a strong advocates either through your board or teacher leaders that they can speak to board members, they can speak to superintendent, they can speak to other parents of what we're doing and what we're offering. I think the ability for us to share resources across the board helped tremendously. That we were, that we were able to do, because I walked into a school that was phased out. I walked into a school, there was nothing there, and it was an unwanted school. And I brought in some of my key teacher leaders, and they wanted that challenge, and we shared ideas and resources and professional development. And now we continue working together to create that model for it to be consistent. And then the last thing, just going back to the question, is having those clear measurable outcomes that you're monitoring on an ongoing basis, that you can always put in front of anyone, a board member, superintendent, or parents, of the performance that you're making on the students, on how things are going. And not only academics, it's also culture. I'm more proud of my culture survey than I am of my academic survey. We want to create happy environments in kids, but always having that outline and start where, brutally honest, where it started, and then look to see what growth was being made due to the programming. But those are a couple of the things.
And before I jump to Pedro, how is your culture survey?
Culture survey was in the 70s of approval, 60s for parents back in 2012. And then we are at 85-90% of just parent and student satisfaction. So we're proud of that. And then the other is we don't wait, and that's a district one, right? So that's the district official survey. We monitor throughout. I met with a parent today, and she was like, I love how I'm greeted when I walk in and how your information is getting out. And those little things of having the right people in place, but we're always monitoring and looking at that.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
With that many parents. I muted myself. Pedro, what would you share with us about key takeaways that you need to do well to implement?
So, for me, my lessons are around how do you do it at scale, right? Because, we have two examples of amazing leaders, that are with me. And it really is, how do you take that to a scale, right? With multiple campuses, multiple different themes. And so for us, a couple lessons we learned. So first of all, starting new schools is probably, for us, even though it's a lot of hard work, is probably where we see the most success from scratch, where we hire a leader, they get to start with a small team, they start with certain grade levels and they move up. We've redesigned and closed, low performing schools, redesigned buildings, and we've done at least a dozen of those since I started. None of them have been lower than a B. When we started getting grades from the state, there was nothing lower than a B, and pretty much waiting lists across the board in terms of parents wanting their children there. So that was one lesson we saw. Taking existing schools and making them an innovative model is more challenging, but still very possible. And there, what we learned was having the parents that are there at the school, as well as the staff, having input in it. And we actually require by board policy votes. So for example, for our schools to become in-district charters, and then eventually if they want to become an 1882 partnership, there has to be at least a 70% support of all of the parents of students that are there, not just of the ones that vote, but everybody. So my school leaders have to go out and talk to the families. They have to say, this is what we're doing. What do you think? They have to get at least 70% of the staff. And in all the schools we've done, we've gotten 80 to 95% in support. By the way, sometimes with a lot of loud noises from people who don't like these ideas because they're different, right? They're just not in favor of them. And they start saying that we're selling out the schools and we're doing all this but what I love is that it's the parents and the teachers at that building with the leaders saying, this is what we want to do. And this is the partner that we like because it's aligned to our mission. And so that's what we've also learned is doing that really for advocates and for other school leaders or district leaders, know that you're going to get pushback when you start doing this kind of stuff. That's how you build the armor to resist that pushback. And
so tell me a little bit more about that pushback. How did you overcome it, or how did you win hearts and minds to make this even a possibility to get launched?
So I think first of all, like I said, it was interesting because The first challenge is always when you have to close schools or redesign schools, right? And so you deal with that, and frankly, they're just having a brave board that says enough. We cannot tolerate low performance. We cannot tolerate children not doing well, especially when we're 90% poverty, 97% children of color. So that was my board. That really, I give them full credit. They're the ones that stood up and said no more, and the community stood with them. The second was really creating all this change, right? Which people are just afraid. And so for existing schools and really promoting and really allowing existing schools to say, it's okay, and let's give you an avenue to go down this path. It's okay for you to become an industry charter. It's okay for you to develop an 1882 partnership. And by the way, in the beginning, it was slow. People were afraid, right? But as we started doing more and more, so for example, we just added our last set of industry partnerships with the Alamo Colleges, our community college partner. They are now partnering with us on our 3 early college schools, which already were successful. But now we have an additional resources so that that's sustainable going forward. And those children are getting associate's degrees. And now I got another set of schools who said, hey, what about us? We want to partner with dual language schools. We want to partner with UTSA, which is a University of Texas here in San Antonio, who's been our dual language partner for forever, for more than a decade. And now they're like, we're ready to do this deep partnership. And so what it's done is it's changed the conversation to, oh my God, why are you doing this? And you're selling out the schools to, wow, we see the benefits now because it really is about furthering the mission of that school. And so for us, the lesson that I kind of would say for all my colleagues is that we get caught up at the district level about what people say about us. But at the end of the day, it's about what's happening at the school. That's what parents really care about. And for us, we just kept that conversation focused on the school and on the staff and the parents there.
Very good. I'd like to invite the audience to feel free to ask questions as well. You can use the room chat function. We have a few more minutes in the session. So I would love to hear what reactions are and if any of this is raising some curiosity out there. You all have alluded to it to some extent, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your boards and meaning the boards of the zone schools and the individual schools and the role that those boards play in protecting your autonomies and just from the audience perspective to kind of explain how the whole dynamic works. Alex, would you like to start this time?
Yeah, it's with my board, we have a group of individuals, like I said, that are just committed to what we're doing. And we know we're doing something outside the box and that's unique. And we're proud of that. And they fully support it. And they want to support our teachers. They want to hold us to the academics. They want us to be a high-performing, school, and they have high expectations for us. But having that, where regardless of what happens in the climate, that our board stays true to what our mission is. So having that alignment, and I just loved hearing Pedro, talk about his board and the support he's giving. That's where you're able to make the changes that you need to be making. So for our board, we meet frequently. I give them updates on how we are performing, but then they also have work to do as well as far as the advocacy and promoting and then obtaining resources or offering expertise so that we can always stay at the cutting edge with the board. But they report to the district board, right? So the district board approved us being in a zone. So they still have they oversee it. But the nice part about it is that I am responsible to going to the board as the executive director, and they hold me accountable to ensure I have everything going. So that gives and then as long as we're producing the results, that the district is in full support of it moving forward. And then that also allows, the final thing I'll say is that it also allows for people at the grassroots level, at the school level, to be involved in making the decisions. Is the best board members and the best superintendent. When you're at this high level and you're seeing a big landscape, you got to believe in your leaders in the school at the school level. So this allows us to kind of problem solve within a small group and produce the results that we're getting.
Great. Pedro?
I just want to put an exclamation point on what Alex said. At the end of the day, my school board, who are elected officials, are still accountable for everything. And by the way, we control enrollment. So one of the things that we don't allow, for certain kids to be sorted. We control enrollment. That's the equity part of it. So all of my partnership schools are serving neighborhood children. I mean, they're all serving special ed. They're all serving English language learners. They're all serving children of poverty. We didn't allow any, even of our new schools, to go below 50% poverty. So I have all schools have to be at least 50% poverty. And so for me, we own equity. So my board owns that. And so there's nobody that can tell them that, hey, you kind of, you're not being responsible. No. But at the end, the local board, they're in charge of making sure the mission of that school is being fulfilled. And there are advocates to make sure that, hey, we're just trying to do the best IB or Montessori or single gender program, or the best, we have these amazing career tech schools called CAS schools. They're like awesome. Like this is, and what they do is they actually go get more resources for the schools. They get both intellectual resources as well as financial resources. And so for me, I just love it because they're being held accountable by my board, but then they have a local group of advocates who are getting more resources just for that school.
That's great. And finally, Mariama, your board has a specific role for you too.
Yeah, so ours is a little bit different in Indianapolis because the innovation schools have boards that have been put together, but they don't report to the IPS, or the Indianapolis Public Schools board, but they are advocates for the school. And so when we look at the diversity of our board really represents all facets in different areas in the community. But then we also have, alumni who went to Riverside 44 as what it used to be, and they're still deeply tied to the community. So I think as both alluded to and spoke about is just the importance of them being advocates for the school, and they advocate in different ways. And so it's just a different structure in terms of the reporting.
Great. And I know it's really important to pick board members that are going to advocate and going to have a spine and really stand up for the school, and as well as being representative of your school community. We learned that in our research. So we do have a couple questions from the audience, which is exciting. The first one is to anyone on the panel, so you can all three answer, and they want to know about what are the ongoing conversations that you're having with parents and teachers in your schools? What does the community engagement look like?
So, what's interesting for us is our partnership schools, and I think Alice kind of alluded to this, even before the academics got stronger, we saw the engagement of parents even show up as our first leading indicator. And the teachers, our staff was already engaged because, again, even just because of the process I described earlier. But what I saw was even more engagement from parents. And for example, they have the highest participations of PTOs and PTAs. They have the highest participation when they do, parent conversations about, what's happening in the school. And so for what I didn't anticipate was the unintended benefit of the fact that it is a way to leverage parent engagement in a way that we always want, we want to do that in every school.
And I would just say, just comparatively, from being a district principal to being an innovation school leader, one of the major differences we see is just the level of voice that teachers and also parents have. And so, especially right now during COVID, what parents have said that they wanted or needed, and how responsive we've been able to be as a single school, we hear constantly from families that they appreciate being a part of an autonomous school, because where we see needs we meet those. Our teachers are saying the same thing because they see their colleagues that are in other school districts that are large, and it's the same thing happens for everybody versus what the specific school community needs. And I think they feel like their voices are heard, and because something changes as a result of what they say and what they're experiencing.
Yeah, the word that we use is being nimble, right? Being able to quickly make changes when you need to make the changes. So today I was meeting with a group of parents, and they mentioned something, and we were able to make those changes right away and clear that. So we're constantly getting better. And the other part with the teacher piece is having flattening the line as much as possible, right? I have a lot of teacher leaders that are either leading grade levels, leading departments, and that's where the teacher voice starts to come. And it also allows us to just stay true to what we said we were going to offer, so that we're not fragmenting and only having one great class and then another class is not so great. It's really about offering all great classes and impacting 100% of the students.
So that's great that, Mariama, that you brought up the coronavirus, because that's our next question. And Alex, I think you're alluding to it as well when you talk about being nimble. But the audience member wants to know, how do you feel that your schools have fared during this terrible upheaval compared to what you see in other places?
So, I think the pandemic has been a challenge for everybody, and I really credit my school leaders and teachers. So one of the things that I will tell you, our philosophy of empowering school leaders and teachers has never, during this pandemic, has probably served us the best, because they have been, and what we believe in is they're the closest to the problem. So what I love is that, we have right now about 30% of our children in person. We phase them in, but it's teachers parting with parents who maybe are afraid, but their child is struggling remote, trying to do remote learning, and they work together to either bring in a child either during the school day, after school, or Saturday programs. They get very creative. But what I love is in the beginning of this pandemic, they're the ones that really perfected our safety procedures. It was our teachers who literally, figured it all out and made adjustments. And the only thing I really needed to do is just to make sure that we got out of their way and got them whatever they needed. So whatever, I told my staff, there's no room to say no. So if they need whatever they need, you get it for them, whether it's technology, PP&E, same thing for parents, but then let them problem solve, because they're the best in place to do that.
And what we saw, here as an independent school was when the pandemic hit, we were able to make immediate and quick decisions. And we saw that some of our colleagues in the larger districts were stuck. They were waiting on a decision to be made and trickle down to their school, as opposed to, we saw our kids needed computers. We got donations and immediately purchased computers and put them in the hands of our kids.
Can I interrupt you just for a second? Do you think that is strictly a function of your size, or do you think it's size plus the entrepreneurial mindset that innovation school leaders bring to the task?
I think it's both. I mean, there are some innovation schools within Indianapolis. There are about 24 of them, but there are some that have zones, if you will. While they're not called zones, there are 3 or 4 of them. But it's still that ability to make the decisions and not wait for a bureaucratic red tape to be cut to move things forward. And I think that's what our parents don't call it, bureaucratic red tape, but what they appreciate is that it doesn't exist. So when we see that families need something and we have partners that we work with in the community, we ask for their support, we get the funds, and we move it forward. And I know that my colleagues, principals in other districts, were so envious of the ability that we had to see a problem, fix it, and move forward, and then get feedback from families, not a year later, not 6 months later, but within the first 2 weeks, to see what do we need to adjust to keep making this beneficial for families. And we continue to make adjustments along the way. So while remote learning is difficult for everyone, we do have right now a program that families feel like their kids are learning. And that's what our last survey told us, that 78% of the families felt like their children were still learning, even though they've been remote since the very beginning of the year.
Great. And then I don't think you got a chance to weigh on this real quick, Alex, did you?
No, I love the fact of just giving the problem to the school, right? And just believing in the school and providing those resources like Superintendent Martinez mentioned. And also, we were able to move quickly. We were able to, we were a blended learning school already. We already had the structures already in place. We were able to push out the computers, and we were ready to go in the first few days. So we're far ahead, many other schools, and other schools learned from us, and they were asking. It's much more challenging at a huge level, right, to start making all the systematic changes. And a lot of people were waiting, and we were always able to go, no, this is the schedule. Just tell me what the parameters are. Okay, this is the structure. And then we were getting communication sent out, and feedback we've gotten from our families and our parents has been very positive and just very appreciative of what we've been doing here at the school.
That's awesome. Well, when we first started doing this research and planning for this project, we did not have any imagination that we would be doing this in a pandemic and during a time when so much racial and social injustice was refocusing the focus on education in this country and the need for systemic changes across all kinds of systems, but certainly education. So it's my hope, and I know it's David's hope, that as the pandemic has revealed such structural weaknesses, especially in large urban districts, that we won't just snap back to the way things are, and that maybe more places might be open to taking the risk and overcoming the fear, Pedro, that you mentioned, to try innovation schools. So I'm going to have David speak to this real quick, but we have just published The Third Way, a guide to implementing innovation schools. And David, would you just sum up what we were trying to accomplish with that?
Well, we think that the centralized, standardized model for urban school districts that, emerged more than a century ago is increasingly dysfunctional, and the school districts have to change. They are changing, but it's so slow. So we really believe that this idea of innovation or partnership schools, as it's practiced in about 20 cities around the country now, is working and offers a path whereby a district that was very centralized and standardized can gradually move toward empowering its educators, empowering its principals, and empowering its communities of parents. As Indianapolis is, as San Antonio is, and as Denver is. So we're very hopeful that this idea will spread, and we're doing everything we can to spread it. So if any of you out there listening and watching this know of a district that's interested, or know of a state legislator that might be interested in sponsoring legislation, we would love to help. Just please get in touch with us at the Progressive Policy Institute.
And the guide is available at that website there in PDF. You'll just want to click on the Reinventing America's Schools Project tab, and it'll come right up. It includes model legislation, which even if you are in a location that is not quite ready to introduce something in the legislature, actually sort of serves as a checklist for all the things you need to consider. And we also have it available in a hard copy. So my email is there if you would like a hard copy to pass along to a school board member or a Department of Education staff or legislator. Just reach out to us and we'll get one into your hands. And I want to thank Alex and Mariama and Superintendent Martinez and David Osborne and everybody at EdPalooza and Excel and Ed that invited us to be here today and who took their time to participate in our session. I hope you found it very informative and a value add. Thank you.